Hey there, Dave Paulides, Can-Am Missing Project, copyrighted edition for our video page. And you are looking at Hungry Horse Reservoir, and that is an osprey nest that's out there that is very active. I've seen a few of those birds fly back and forth in the last few days. It's quite a sight. The reservoir is very calm today, but it's strange. It was supposed to be up into the 50s, and it's snowing right now. I've got the camera in the back of the vehicle here because the weather is so bad, but no wind, which is nice. Talk about a few things that have come up in the last few days that are important to our cause. First one being, a lot of people have contacted us a lot in the last few days about buying books online, Missing 411 books. And I like to say that you need to be really careful. Unfortunately, there's been several people that have bought books online for $50 to $100 a piece when you can get them from us directly for $24.99. There's a couple groups. There's one out of Utah right now that's really active and pushing sales, making a fortune off of unsuspecting people. So I probably should say it in every video. Do not buy books from Amazon, eBay, no place but our website. Our website is listed on the pinned statement or the first statement on this video that I'll post. Has all the links there. People think, oh, I'm pushing the books. No, I'm actually trying to save people from getting ripped off. So, hear that? Nothing. It's really quiet. So what you're looking at is the mountains on the other side. Those are the mountains on the east side of the reservoir. There's a road that goes up the east side of Hungry Horse Reservoir and a road that goes on the west side. We're on the west side road right now. Both of them go all the way around. They're only paved for a small, short section. Then it turns to dirt. And you best be really careful if you have just a standard car because you probably won't make it. The ruts are bad and the dirt is bad. But it's gorgeous on both sides. Keep your eye on that nest. So, another question that comes up all the time is, Dave, are there staircases in the woods? So, no. And if there were, everyone would have the GPS posted and we could all go and visit. But it doesn't happen because they don't exist. That story got started a number of years ago on Reddit when a fictional writer posted the story to see how many people he could grab to get to believe it. It's a way to verify if your story is a good story and holds interest. So don't believe that stuff. All right? So there's a lot of things out there. Another thing that I'm really, really sick of is people want to believe things from certain authors. And I'm going to tell you that you need to be a critical thinker on these things. If an author writes some stories about people's observations or sightings of something, and the author doesn't go to the site, doesn't even meet with the people, doesn't vet the story, doesn't vet the background of the people, and in all the stories I've written that were like that, I had the people sign an affidavit under penalty of perjury that what they were saying was true. If they don't do any of that, what makes the story worth a damn? And there's a bunch of authors publishing books now that do that exact same thing. It's like people just want to believe. I suppose that's your business, but I'm trying to save you the heartache when you find out later on that you've been ripped. So demand a higher level from these authors that are printing these books. And in fact, one author just asked for solicitations on stories so they could print them. Whatever. So I'm just telling you. So we're going to go to the mailbox here so Dave doesn't freeze. So person writes, Egyptian occult practice use large amount of granite. water as a reflection for a gateway? Question mark. The metaphysical phenomena which originated with the Semiramis and was central to numerous with ancient cultures was especially developed in Egypt, where the Semiramis were known as Osiris, Isis, and in the Ezekiel chapter 8 of the children of Israel set up the obelisk verse facing the entry to the temple, just as the dome faces the obelisk in Washington, D.C. and in Vatican City, and were condemned by God for worshiping the sun Ra while weeping for Osiris. The familiar Masonic figure of the point within a circle is the symbol of the union between Ra, Osiris, and Isis, Isis. The point represents Orus's phallus in the center of the circle or womb of Isis, which in turn is enlivened by the sun rays from Ra, just as is represented today at the Vatican, where the Egyptian obelisk of Osiris sits within a circle, and in Washington, D.C., where the obelisk does similarly. Situated so to be the first thing the sun, Ra, strikes as it rises over the Capitol, and which, when viewed from overhead, forms the magical point within a circle known as a circumpunct. The sorcery is further amplified according to ancient occultic beliefs by the presence of the reflecting pool in Washington, D.C., which serves as a mirror to heaven and a transferring point for immortals, spirits, and energies. And just what is it the spirits see when they look down to the reflecting pool in Washington, D.C.? They find a city dedicated to and built in honor of the legendary deities Isis and Osiris, complete with the 13 gathered pieces of Osiris, America's original 13 colonies. The required obelisk known as the Washington Monument, the Capitol Dome of Isis for impregnation and incarnation of a deity into each pharaoh, the president. And last but not least, the official government buildings erected to face their respective counterparts and whose cornerstones, including the U.S. Capitol Dome, were dedicated during astrological alignments related to the zodiac constellation Virgo, parentheses Isis, as required for the magic to occur. I find that pretty interesting. And I've heard this before, but that writing, I appreciated it. It was good. So the next letter is called Night Marchers. There comes a truck up this road here. Night Marchers, sending prayers and blessings to you for comfort, guidance, and protection. Something very interesting came up in conversation about you today. I was speaking to the daughter of a dear friend who is battling cancer. She is receiving hospice care. My friend is a warm, wonderful, intelligent woman and needs something worthwhile to bend her mind to. Her focus is limited, so reading for long movies are out. I told her daughter about a YouTube channel and showed her one wherein you talked about the Night Marchers. This young woman stopped our conversation about how much her mom would enjoy your podcast and relayed this story. She said she had heard about the Marchers from friends who live on the islands in Hawaii. She said she learned about them after an unusual experience. She says that years ago she had a dream that was so vivid that it was not really a dream, but it was imagery and message was not her own, as it is real today as when she awoke. She remembers that in this dream, she was with friends, and they were running away from something frightening. They all ran to some boulders to hide. She separated them to her hiding place that was shaped in the form of a symbol pi. She crouched in fear as a line of native warriors ran past. She then heard a female voice that said, "Come with me." She turned to see a woman standing beside a lake beckoning her to follow. She felt compelled and followed the woman into the lake, and under the lake, where she said she saw an entire world, a completely different existence. The woman said to her, "You can always come here and be safe." She said she then opened her eyes to find herself in her bed and felt as if she had experienced everything as if it was real. Dave, she has never read your book, nor have I ever discussed it with her before today. Sorry this is so long, but with you, as you know, I wanted to share. I personally believe that we can receive messages when our waking minds are not fully conscious. and our perception of the universe is much broader and clearer, not to be clouded by the same. In any case, knowing this girl, I am sure the images were not her own. She is not a scientist or an anthropologist or a physicist, but she is smart, salt of the earth. Interesting that pi is a number with no end. Boulders, water, point of separation, portal? I don't know. I'm sure she will share your podcast with her mom. Your work is important. Be blessed, and thanks for listening. Interesting. Next story. Hello, David. Firstly, I'd like to say that I keep up with my prayers daily. I truly believe there is a God and that we go to be safe with him after we die. After losing my incredible loving sister to suicide, that is what keeps me sane. Believing that we will be together again one day. My sister was a very kind and generous person. She was known for helping the elderly in her neighborhood. She also had many struggles throughout her life that affected her greatly, and then losing her breast to cancer really sent her over the edge. From the things she said after her surgery, it almost seemed as though she felt much less of a woman. Although that wasn't the case, there was no telling her otherwise. On a very cold January morning, she left her apartment in Toronto and walked the 15 minutes to the Bloor, B-L-O-O-R Street Bridge and jumped. When the police showed up at my door, my whole world changed that day. I was angry for a long time, but now realize possibly, might even understand why she jumped. Life is just simply too damn hard. I have a very hard time coping with the loss of a loved one as it is, but when it's suicide, there's something different about that. She chose to leave me. That was a hard pill to swallow. I do the best I can to cope each day because quietly, honestly, she rarely leaves my mind. I've thought of suicide, I thought of a suicide support group to see if that might help me ease the pain, but COVID has destroyed any chances of that. I was wondering what you do to try to ease some of your pain after losing Ben. I go out into nature as much as I can, but not like I used to, as I have to admit that I'm scared to go in the forest alone now. I will continue to keep you in my prayers. On another note, my daughter and I have had several scary encounters with UFOs and strange lights in the forest around our home and in our home at times. My daughter has had the most unusual incidents happen to her, and I'm going to send you another email in a day or two with some stories of things that have happened to us, including the thing that absolutely convinced me that there are indeed UFOs and entities from places other than Earth. That incident caused me to believe without a doubt that I believe these entities have something to do with the missing 411 cases. What do I do to keep my mind off Ben? Realistically, the most important thing for me is keep my mind super active, engaged, to the point where I have to pay attention to what I'm doing. And when I need to meditate or I need to focus on something important, maybe even spend some time thinking about Ben, I come out here, quiet, alone. It's rich to me. But as I've said before, find your passion, and your passion will guide you. It'll take you places where your mind needs to go to find relief. And there is group meetings now of NAMI, N-A-M-I, and these group meetings are on Skype. So you can join a Skype meeting for NAMI that's in Los Angeles, and you could be in Toronto. And I would suggest that if you're having depression, suicide support groups for victims and families, NAMI is great. You need to go there and join and sit in and understand how valuable it is to be around people who are just like you and me and who are having day-to-day troubles with life. And there's a lot of us. And don't think that you're alone. And don't try to battle it alone by being alone. Don't isolate yourself. I think that's one of the things that led Ben to his demise, was being alone too much. So, two big cases I'm going to talk to you about today. First one involves this man right here, Charles Ulrich, 63 years old. Disappeared January 29th, 1975. Give you a little change in direction here. And Charles was a very healthy, super witty man. Everyone said that he was fun to be around. Religion was a cornerstone to his life. Taught Sunday school, went to church every weekend. He worked for the State Bureau of Employment Services in the state of Ohio. He was a senior member of the Masons. He worked in a city called New Philadelphia, and he lived on Riverside Road right outside of Ulrichsville, Ohio, right near a river, very close to the Tuscarawas River. Now, he's a father of two, and both of his kids were professors at Purdue. He raised some super smart kids. On January 29th, that night, he walked across town in New Philadelphia, and he met his wife at the hospital where she was a dietitian. Grabbed a ride with her, came home. They made some food. He watched a basketball game. They both fell asleep in their chairs. His wife said that she woke up and watched a little bit of Johnny Carson. He went to bed. She went to bed, followed him in, and they went to sleep. Well, Charles was a man of routine. And every morning he would get up 6 a.m. and part of that would be to get up, make some coffee, shave, fix his hair, get dressed, and then at 6:55 he'd wake his wife up, and they would watch their morning religious show every day. And then he'd walk across his property and pick up a ride with a Mason friend to take him to work. Well, on the morning of January 29th, 1975, the alarm went off at 7 a.m., and his wife woke up and looked and found out that Charles wasn't in bed. He hadn't woke her up, and she got up, and there was a big thunderstorm that had been going on over their home for the previous hour, and it was still thunder and lightning everywhere. And their front door was slightly open. She thought, wow, that's weird. She looks around. She finds Charles's shoes, his belt, his keys, his wallet, all the things he needs to go out the door. And it's pouring outside. Well, she waits a while. She calls a neighbor. And she waits till 8:30, and then she calls the sheriff. And then they start searching. Well, at the same time that morning that she's calling the sheriff, a few miles away, the sheriff gets a call of a screaming coming from a quarry. Now, I'm going to bring this up as close as I can without getting it too dark. This is Charles's house along the Tuscarawas River. New Philadelphia is up here. Ulrichsville is right here. Here's the quarry. It's only a couple miles away. And the police department said they'd never had anything like that. Now, what's fascinating about that to me is that in Missing 411, A Sobering Coincidence, I'd written about several disappearances where bodies were found in water in quarries. Now, there was no water in this quarry, but it's odd that screams came from it. Well, they searched the quarry, didn't find anything. They then came through and searched the river for 3 days. They then searched everything you can imagine around Charles's house for a week and never found anything. Now, no shoes, disappeared right next to a river, no tracks. They brought in canines, and canines never picked up a scent. There was a huge weather change above their house, thunder and lightning. Now, he wasn't found. A couple weeks later, his wife, Dorothy, buys a German Shepherd. And the German Shepherd's in her house for a week. And she comes home from work, and the German Shepherd had somehow gotten tangled in the electrical cord to the point that it broke the dog's neck. That's what the story said. I have never heard of that happening. And I find it suspicious that Dorothy's new German Shepherd dog, weeks after Charles disappeared, breaks its neck by getting tangled in an electrical cord. It was one of the most bizarre sub-stories to a main story I'd ever read. Now, people like to ask me, well, Dave, what was the association of the victim and religion? Well, Charles' association was huge. Religion was a big part of his life. So, you have one there. Now, I'm going to give you a second story, also from Ohio, that has to do with somebody who was on the verge of becoming a physician. Now, if you remember that the last story I gave you last week was about a person who disappeared who was also on the verge of becoming a physician in British Columbia. So that story dealt with a woman and her boyfriend who disappeared on a hike. Now this story has to do with another medical student, a man named Brian Shaffer, 27 years old, disappeared April 1st, 2006 from Columbus, Ohio. Now Brian was as an all-American kid as you can't imagine. Super great grades in high school. He had a loving girlfriend at the time he disappeared. His mom, Renee, and his dad, Randall, and he had a brother named Derek. We were a tight family, really tight. Well, Brian got a bachelor's degree in microbiology. Essentially just absolutely nailed his grades and got accepted into medical school at Ohio State. And on March 31st, 2006, Brian and his dad, who were super close, Randall, had dinner in downtown Columbus at a steakhouse. And then Brian said that he was going to go out after dinner and meet some friends. And he did. And he first called his girlfriend, said, hey, I'm going to go over to the Ugly Tuna Saloona in Columbus. And he and his girlfriend were going to leave the next day for a short vacation in Miami. And he called his girlfriend, set everything up to meet the next morning, and he met his friend, another guy, at the saloon. And Brian and his friend hung out for a long time, and then his friend said that Brian got lost somewhere in the restaurant. He didn't see him. Well, he searched around for him, couldn't find him, and thought, well, I guess he left, and he left. Well, when Brian didn't show up the next day at his girlfriend's house, his girlfriend started calling around, reported him as a missing person. Well, a detective named Brian Edwards from the Columbus Police took a special interest in this case. And this bar had an escalator that went up to the second floor where it was. And it was a location that was only one way in and one way out and had a lot of cameras in it. And actually the city of Columbus has a lot of cameras in it. So Brian thought, Detective Brian Edwards thought this would be a pretty easy case. He watched the footage for hundreds of hours, and the one footage of the escalator who went to and fro hundreds of times. Brian was last seen at just after 1 a.m. near the top of the escalator talking to some friends. He's seen turning and going back inside the bar. He's never, ever seen leaving the bar. The only other way is jumping out a second floor window. That's it. Now, many years afterwards, Brian Edwards, the detective, was working a football game at Ohio State. And he has said over and over that this case is one that's really bothered him over the years. Because nobody believed that Brian Shaffer should disappear and couldn't understand why he would disappear. But he's at this football game at Ohio State, and he sees a man walk by him who looked to him just like Brian, and he ran, caught the guy, grabbed him. It was Brian's brother, Derek. You talk about how sharp Detective Edwards was to catch that vision and how much it must have bothered him. Well, in March 2006, Brian, Derek, and Randall lost their mom to cancer. So, here's a picture of Brian and his mom. His mom died the month before he disappeared. She died of cancer. Now, this was the white coat ceremony that medical students go through. It's a big deal. And this is Randall, his dad. Super proud guy of his son, absolutely. I wrote the story and I shed tears over it because I know exactly what his dad was thinking. How proud he was of his son. Oh my God. So, Brian disappears in April. Well, September 14th, 2008. September 14th, 2008. About 2.5 years after Brian disappears. About the same amount of time after Randall loses his wife. Now it's just Derek, Brian's brother, and Randall. There's a big windstorm in the area where Randall lived, just outside of Columbus. And a windstorm knocks down a tree as Randall's in the backyard. The tree hits him and kills him. Now he's dead. The only one who's left is Derek. And I think about Derek all the time, because how he's lost three people in his family in a very short period of time. Now, why is this case in the book? Well, first of all, in Missing 411, A Sobering Coincidence, I wrote at least 36 stories where a victim, a young, healthy student, a victim is in a bar. And his friends, their friends, all say that somehow or another, they lost track of him. That's the Osprey. It's kind of cool. So, and they lose track of him in the bar. They don't think anything until the next morning when the victim's reported missing. It almost happens the same way all the time. And then the victim, 95% of the time, is found deceased in water within a week or 2 weeks after they disappear from the inside of a bar. There's no evidence how the person got out of the bar. In this incident, this is the best evidence we have that something highly unusual, paranormal if you say, happened because Brian did not come down that escalator. There was some talk that, oh, maybe he switched clothes, put a cap on, put his head down, and walked out trying to be secretive about it. But in reality, Detective Edwards said he looked at all the film and nothing like that matched. They did searches of the establishment many times. They talked to friends. They interviewed dozens of people who were there that night. Nobody can account for how Brian left or where he went. Now, if you look in the totality of this, where we're talking about another medical student, how many people in that medical community I have written about who have disappeared is mind-boggling. Whether it's a physician, whether it's a physician's physical therapist, I've written about them who've disappeared. It's baffling. It doesn't make sense. There's no easy understanding. Brian's girlfriend, obviously, just devastated. She was actually also a medical student. She assisted in the investigation the best that she could. The family just went through an enormous amount of tragedy in just a 2.5 year period of time. And, you know, like me losing Ben, I can't understand how Randy Schaffer went on after losing his wife and Brian like he did. There was some peripheral talk on the internet about, oh, you know, maybe Brian wanted to fall out of society or something. Well, it's been 15 years, and there's been no evidence that that has ever happened. And he was too much of a stellar individual, and he just finished, you know, multiple years in medical school, and he was like the king of the class. Everything was done right. He had great grades. He was on to greatness. And then he just disappears. One of the last things I want to show you is this is a map of Ohio. Columbus, where these incidents were happening, and Ulrichsville over here. And what's right there? Another Great Lake. I think it all comes into play. I don't see how it can't. Hurrah, it stopped snowing. Hey, that's good. The lake is real calm right now. And it snowed right down to the level where we're at last night. About half a mile up the road here from where I'm at, if you're going south, the roads, you have to have a snowmobile to get by it. It's a huge snowfall came across the road and shut down. So we're about as far as you can. Only people that you see cross my path here are Jeeps and big four-wheel drives that can go even as far as I have. I had to go through a snowbank up here just to get to this point. But those are the two cases. Charles Ulrich, 63 years. Brian Shaffer, 27 years. Both from Ohio, both missing under very unusual circumstances. Again, please give me a thumbs up if you like the video. Please post these videos online and give them some visibility. A few of you have written to me in just the last week and said that there's people out there using my content. If you see somebody on another YouTube channel using my content, the best thing to do is put a comment on there that you don't like it, and also put a comment on there, a link to our main webpage that has almost approaching 100 videos now. And that really helps us bring viewers over to the real Missing 411 site. And hopefully it'll send the direct message to some of these people to stop using our stuff. But other than that, remember that we are a village here. We are a family. And I think it's evident that after now a couple years of doing this, we've kind of wiped away a lot of the people that want to cause problems. I try to go through it and read the comments and get rid of the comments that are vulgar or negative and try to stay positive about it. So hopefully we'll keep bringing on great new people as we have in the last couple months. So thank you for being a friend. Thanks for the support and caring about me as this journey goes on. And we'll keep in touch, and I'll keep bringing you valuable new cases. Thank you very much. Have a good week. Give you a little more scan here. What you're looking at, it's a lake.